Hey, we're live. Thank you so much for clicking on this and for choosing to watch this, for selecting this. We're gonna have a very exciting episode today. We started the series how I met my husband, and we're bringing solid women who are working this journey in their own life and have been married for a particular length of years and above, and they are coming to share with us how they met their husband. So we have Mommy Mo up. Okay, yes, she's joined in. I'm just trying to make sure that I get a profile, and then she would share with us how she met her husband. Momo has been married for 46 years. What an inspiration. One moment. Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm reading the profile while she comes up.
Good morning, Mommy Mo. Okay.
Good morning. Good good morning. How are you? Okay then. How are you today?
Again, I don't take it at all for granted. Mommy Mo is sitting on board. Mommy Mo is busy. Mommy Mo is counseling people. So I don't even take it for granted at any point. Thank you so much, Ma.
All right
So I'll
then.
go straight to just read a bit about your profile for those who were not part of the first live. Modupe Ehirim, the founder, she's the founder and the lead counselor at the Right Fit Marriage Academy. She works with men and women to become persons that their spouses look forward to coming home to. Using this 5-step of the Right Fit marriage process, Modupe Ehirim guides married people to intentionally design and build healthy and long-lasting marriages. She's a certified Save Your Marriage Before It Starts facilitator, and she's also a certified family sister engineering practitioner. She's of Yoruba origin. She's happily married to Boniface, her husband of over 36 years, who hails from Imo State. Together, they have 4 lovely children, and that is just a professional abridged version of Mommy Mo's profile. I would read the one that we posted, which is she has been married for 37 years. She got married at the age of 26. Lagos, they met in Lagos. She's Yoruba and she got married to Igbo, and their religion is both Christianity. Okay, Mamo, by the way, Mamo, before I go ahead, 2 things that I was ruminating on before this interview. I was just saying, Mamo, let's just change it to the digital mommy, because I saw Momo is always on top of trends. So Momo, I saw this trend, this thing that people do where you divide your screen, you're watching a video and you're trying to analyze the developer. Even I have not even done even I have not even done this, and at this time that my mom already put it together. Like it is so easy. My mom will do challenges, then the one that is ongoing now. I'm just like, let's just change her name. And then one more thing, the profile on the Right Fit Marriage is so apt. Like it's something that so every time I read it, it still gets to me. Let me get it right so that I don't say the wrong thing. So this is it, which is I help young professionals become the person their partner is excited to come home to. Anyways, I think that's a different conversation. Maybe somewhere in the mix we can ask you how you came out with that. But that is such an elevator pitch. It's such an elevator pitch that I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Monroe. So to the gist of the gist. We started this interview or we started this series because we want to help to dispel and even eliminate the fears that a lot of young people have regarding marriages. I think that's, well, just like they say in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. Many people are so quick to run towards negative news, search for fights. There's this thing that they call violence. Those are the kind of thing people want to engage in rather than search out for the right kind of information. So we said, okay, let us start this to get, because this won't be an interview, to get mentors who can come in and share generously so that I will put it out there, put it on YouTube. You cannot say that, oh, you're looking for your spouse now and you did not get help. It's impossible because we are doing this within our own space. So this is one of the great reason and purpose why we're doing this. And so that takes me to the first question, which is how did you meet your husband? And thank you for everybody.
Hello, everyone. How did I meet my husband? We met, we just happened to be doing NYSC in the same place. And for those who are not Nigerians, NYSC is a compulsory program that you have to do once you graduate from the university. So I went to my place of primary assignment, and in that place of primary assignment, there were a couple of other people who were also serving there. And we just used to go about in a group. And that was how I met my husband. That is when you say, not when did I decide he would be my husband, just when we met. So we were just in a group of people, there were, I think, if I remember rightly, there probably were about 15 of us serving in that organization at the time. So we would go to lunch together. The company had a bar in the evening. We would also go to the bar and have a drink before going home. So that was the environment and circumstances in which I met him.
Okay, so please could you share with us about what was that group about? Was it an interest group, something you were interested in? Was it something that you had to be in, or a group you had to be in because you were all working in the same place? We want to know what your purpose was for joining that group, which is where you first met your husband.
Okay, I don't even think there was a purpose. The reason that so it was an informal type of group. So you are working in an organization and there is just a set of you that came in at the same time. So all of us were working in different departments, but the organization had a canteen and they provided lunch every day for us. So usually a few of us would just agree and meet, so we would sit at the same table. The same thing for after the bar after work. It wasn't that we were gathering for a purpose. We just were people who were existing in the same environment and we were interacting together. So we would just gist, talk about things. Some people would talk about work. Some during that NYSC were already employed by the organization and they were serving. Some of us just were going to do the NYSC there and go. So just the regular kind of situation. So you could liken it to people who are going to the same church or people who live in the same neighborhood. Circumstances brought them together and they just were interacting together socially. That's how I met my husband.
Okay. So, Mamo, what was the interaction between you two from there with everything that you've explained to us? How did you now move to become friends or even start dating? You will see why we're asking all these questions as we
You
continue. Because
know.
in this our generation, ma, it seems to be so harmed. So,
Mm.
want to learn again.
I like to have this kind of conversations because it helps people to know that really people meet in all kinds of circumstances. It just depends on how open you are and how confident and not lacking in fear that you have. So I had gone to engineering school. I came out of university with first class honors. So I really was somebody who was pretty confident. And this was a factory environment. So the people that I got to interact more with were the people who were in the engineering or in the laboratory. So my husband at that time, he was already employed by the organization, but he had a stint in the laboratory where I was permanently. And because conversation with men was not anything. My parents had encouraged us, even as children, to bring our friends home. My father was not a party to hiding in the street corners. Anybody who is your friend, male or female, got a seat in our house. So I already had a culture of just interacting with people in that way. So we were having this conversation, and he was talking about, he and some other people along with me were talking about girls in Nigeria because he had studied abroad and had just come home to do NYSC and to work. So they were saying, how girls pose, they'd be interested in you. When you toast them or want to invite them out, then they'll be doing as if they're not interested. And I just said to him, I don't know the kind of girls that you have been meeting. If you ask me out, I'm either interested in you or not interested in you. And if I'm not interested in you, I say no. But if I would like to, and when I mean interested, not even for dating. Remember, I had been one of two girls in a class of 28 for 5 years in the university. So I've been going out with boys was not anything to me. So I just said that to him, that you must have been meeting silly girls who don't know their mind. That's the reason why they'll be posting. So I think a few weeks after that, he invited me. I remember very vividly to go out with him. And I already had something planned for that. So he said, you see, I'm inviting you out and you're saying no. I said, where are you coming from? Oh yeah, invite me out again. So he extended another invitation to me, and then we went out. I think we went to see a play, something like that, at the National Theatre. Then it was very vibrant and active. So after that, we got talking some more. Of course, he moved on to other parts of the organization to continue his own work because he was in training along with doing NYS. Then he invited me to come and visit him in his home. And of course, there is nobody who can do anything to me that I don't want them to do to me. So I didn't have anything to do. I agreed that I would go visit him that Sunday. Festac Town was still new. And that day I took a taxi and got to Festac Town. It was my first time of going to Festac Town. And it started to rain very heavily. And I didn't quite understand the layout, so I couldn't give right descriptions to the taxi driver. We drove round and round eventually, but I was just thinking, if I get to the office tomorrow now, and I didn't see this guy, he's going to be thinking I'm one of these Nigerian girls. No way. I'm going to make sure I show up in his house, and then after the rain subsided, I walked around and eventually figured out where he was living. And you could see the surprise on his face, when he saw me, because it was well past the time that I said I was going to be there, and I was not yet there. So he welcomed me. I had a drink. It was his brother's place, his brother and the family who was staying with them. And then, I saw that he had a fantastic collection of music. I was completely ignorant. And so he played, he introduced me to a couple of things. That afternoon, we just chatted and everything. And I would say that that's where we became friends. At that point in time, there really wasn't any, I don't know for him, but for me, I wasn't thinking, is he interested in me? Does he want to marry me? He was just somebody you know, in my community, like I had experienced when I was in university and in engineering class with men. It was just somebody who I liked and enjoyed being with. So I would visit with him, he would visit with me. Of course, at work, we had quite some interaction. But the thing is that he was very forthcoming, and he would, you know, he was telling me about his life, what he wanted, where he wanted to go. In fact, I think at that time he was actually dating somebody. Yes, he was dating somebody. Yes, you know, so it just was it just was a natural progression. And I always share with people, the more that I got to know my husband, the more that I really thought, wow, this is a good man. I dated other people. In fact, at the time that this was happening, I had an ongoing relationship as well with a classmate who I graduated from the same course with. But one of the things that struck me about my husband was that he just was clear about where he wanted to go in his life. And he was, you know, in conversations with me and with other people, he usually talked about it. So I knew who he was, I knew where he was going, I knew when he wanted to get married. He even had the year he wanted to get married, quite, clearly defined, you know, and things like that. You know, so as we became friends, I spent more time with him, and we talked about all of these kind of things. He was interested also in what I wanted to do. I always say to people that at this stage, there was nothing going on between me and my husband. But that year, on the 31st of December, which is about 3 months after I met my husband, when my family was seated and we were crossing over into the new year, I told my parents that I had met the person that I wanted to marry. And, so my parents asked me, who is he? I said, I can't tell you anything about him because I don't even know whether he wants to marry me. You know,
it would have been so funny.
Well, my parents, I don't think, was surprised by that kind of thinking, because essentially they had nurtured us that even if you wanted friends, even people you will interact with, when you meet people, the first thing you look at is their character and the kind of life they live and, you know, who they really are. So essentially what it means is that I can make up my mind about the kind of relationship I want to have with you without even having a relationship with you yet. But so that was that realization for me was the turning point in my own relationship with him. But then I just really went on as we were going. To be honest, I don't know when it was that he decided to let the other young lady go and decided that I was the person who was going to be. But we progressed from there, and it just was a natural progression. You know, we I think for me and my husband, we knew one another quite well before we decided to start a relationship. And I think if there's anything I want the young people who are listening to me to know, see, a relationship doesn't start when you meet somebody. A relationship should start consciously when you decide to start it. And that you should make that decision to start it when you have already ticked off a lot of things and asked a lot of questions. I mean, by the time I started dating my husband, he had said to me, I can't allow a girl to get pregnant for me. That, you know, so he was the kind of person who was in control of when the girl will get pregnant for him. Because getting, you know, having sex and getting pregnant for my husband is something that you have control over. You know, so you shouldn't allow your life to be derailed by things that were not material. So those were the kind of conversations that we used to have. So and I remember very vividly that what attracted me to my husband was, wow, I'm a young woman, I haven't quite figured out how my life is going to be. But this guy is so clear about where he's going. If I follow him, I will not miss road.
Wow.
And after 37 years, I still have not missed. I mean, following my husband is a breeze.
Wow. Let's just breathe in first. Wow, that was really interesting to listen to. So I will take it further, Bobby Mo. So how did you know that he was the one with all that he shared?
I don't, some people are very holy. They always say all kinds of things. So for me, even when I had dated my husband for a couple of years and we knew that we were going to get married, I still used to remember I had dated other people before him, and at some point in time, I had realized that this person, me and them cannot go on. So even with my husband, I was like, I like this guy, he's ticking all the boxes, but how do I know that after him, I will not meet somebody else who I will like better?
That's a good question.
Because essentially, that's just I think people want to know whether this person is the exact right person, because they think that if they meet the right person, then they will not have any problems.
Okay.
But the thing is, you're a human being. I mean, we've now lived 37 years. I always say to people, some of what I even teach people now is based on my own personal experience. Because the truth is that at that time, how could I have known what was going to happen in 37 years? And so how could I now be looking at this man and be trying to imagine, if I marry him, how will we be for 37 years? There is no way. And if you look at my husband and myself now, number one, at the time I married my husband, my salary, I think, was, I can't remember my exact salary, but the car I bought at that time was 12,500 naira. So how could I have known that a time will come in life that if you want to buy the same car, you'd be needing like 15 million naira? So how could I now be thinking, this person I marry, what will then, so how will we cope when that time comes? No. So for me, I always admit, at the time I was marrying my husband, I used to think that, if I marry Bonnie now, what if I meet somebody else who I like better than him? But what happened to us is that once we got married, I knew that I would be attracted to other people, but I had already made a decision for this man. He was unlike the people I dated before him. The people I dated before him, we were in a relationship, we broke. But when you marry, it's different. So once we got married, we started living. Until today, my husband teases me. He will say, when I say I love you, he will say, like before. I say no. And then he will say, why can't we go back to that time? You know why he says that? At that time, my eyes were closed. Everything he did was, I just accepted it and everything. But now, now I know my boundaries. Now we address issues. Now, we love one another, but we've realized that love is not the emotion.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma. You said something that was very important on attraction. It is one of this day and one of this generation's problem, this attraction thing. You did share with us that you are attracted to his character, but for you at the time, from your own story and perspective, how much was physical attraction for you at that time? And that will, because you are also a marriage leader, therapist, and you're a leader in this industry, I would like you to also double it by also sharing with us what attraction should mean ideally for people, because we hear all manner of things. Oh, the guy is short. We can't cope together because he's short, or all manner of things that people say or claim that is the reason why they're not going ahead with a relationship. They'll say he's okay, but he's short. I don't think I can be attracted to him. So I would like you to please share from your perspective and also as a marriage counselor.
Okay, then let me share my own experience first. First, I also fed myself a diet of milk and bone and Dennis Robin novels. So of course, I was looking out for somebody, you know, who he wants to kiss me, I would have to look up, you know, and all of those kind of things. And I'm a very tall person. I think only 2 people were taller than me in secondary school. So I lived in fear that, hey, will I ever get a man who is tall enough for me to be able to, you know, all of those kind of things that you have said. When I met my husband, it was one of the things that I had to really struggle with, because I think he's just about the same height as me or a little shorter. And immediately what my mind went to is that, God, if I wear heeled shoes, I'll be taller than this man.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
You know, but the thing was that for me as a person, again, the people of, you know, when people today are taking advice from me, there's something that they want to understand. I told you about my exposure to Mills and Boone and to Dennis Robin novels. Today's world, the people are exposed to 1,000 times what I was exposed to. With the benefit of hindsight now, I realized that particularly what we believe about the place of physical attraction, what we believe about the emotional reaction to somebody we're attracted to, what we believe about how quickly we should like people was actually defined by what we read in Mills and Boone. And I will use the Bible as an illustration. So, you know, if you read the story of Joseph, he had a dream in one chapter. His brothers sold him into slavery at the end of that chapter. The next chapter, he was in Potiphar's palace. After that one, he was in prison. The 3rd chapter, he was in the palace as prime minister. When you pick that story to read, you can finish reading it in 20 minutes.
Sure.
So in your mind, you are thinking, Joseph had a dream. God made the dream come to pass. You read everything in 20 minutes. What you fail to realize is that between Joseph having the dream and becoming a prime minister was some 30 years. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you very quickly gloss over the fact that he was a slave and that he was a prisoner before the dream eventually became true. So, you know, the movies we watch, the books we read, the stories we read on social media, they actually condition our mind. And because we're not conscious and intentional people, we don't interrogate this belief I am having and holding so strongly. Where did it come from? So when you want to make decisions about your life, those filters come in. Coming back to your question, what is the place of physical attraction? It is important that somebody, I mean, if you think my husband must be good looking or my wife must be good looking, I have no problems with that. What you want to ask yourself is, why is it important to me that she be good looking? And the reason I ask that is that this person who is good looking today can have an accident tomorrow and those good looks will not be there. Is your commitment going to be dependent on the looks, or your commitment is going to be dependent on your commitment? So that part of the reason why we encourage people, you know, to not let physical attraction be the highest on their list is because if there is anything that is fickle and you have no control over, it is physical attraction. If in your mind physical attraction is defined by slim, what if that person is somebody who is going to gain weight after they have children? If your physical attraction for you is defined by a certain look, what if that person has a health condition and they start taking some medication that changes them? So physical attraction is important, but frankly, it is one of the things that should be the least in your it should not be one of the things that has the highest priority. But even more than that, interrogate yourself. Ask yourself, why is physical attraction important to you? Interrogate yourself, where did I even get that perspective from? So me, for example, now you can see that I'm not using makeup. It's something I struggle with because society, the media conditions us that if a woman does not look one way, she's not attractive. And when I decided to come online and be public, it really was a struggle for me because people will say, you know, those young people, if you're not looking pink like them, they will not be attracted to you. But I asked myself, did I want to be making up when I didn't want to make up? And I just said to myself that if people who see that I have value to deliver to them, that will change their life, are put off by the time that I'm not made up, then they have bigger problems than they actually realize. So they need to look at themselves. So for me, I think for those who are listening to us, if physical attraction is very important to you, then interrogate yourself. Why is it important to you? Where did you get the perspective that that must be so from? And finally, if you meet the person who has the character and the personality that will deliver a good relationship to you, is physical attraction sufficient for you to say no to them? So I chose to marry my husband who is just about my height, and I've lived with it. The honest to goodness truth is that sometimes when we are going out together and I want to wear a shoe that has heels, I remember it again. I'm saying, if I wear this shoe now, I'll be taller than body. But then, you know, it just becomes something that you get used to and you live with. The feeling does not go away. And the reason the feeling doesn't go away is that society condition. See, even as old as I am, sometimes when I have interacted with people on Facebook, on Instagram, I come back, you know, to my real life and I'm dissatisfied and looking at certain things. And I have to remind myself that, no, nothing is wrong with where you are. Or you don't know what is in those people's lives. So before you start thinking what they have is what you need, you really need to know them well enough and the situation before you can conclude that what they have is better than yours.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for delivering, as always. Just a lot to soak in. Okay, so the next question, Mommy Mo, is you shared a lot from that point. I'm just even trying to just drink it in. What obstacles did you both manage before getting married? So did you have any sort of obstacles or difficulties like in-laws, finance? It could even be a medical situation, maybe AS, because there are lots of these obstacles that some people claim is the reason why they're not getting married to this very good person. In fact, at a point, I had to put up why AS can get married to AS. And when I put that up on my YouTube, I started seeing couples. There's this couple that their AS, they got married, but they found a medical way around it because the person was inherently good and they didn't want to let go of each other, which is great. So I would like you to share with us any obstacle you had at the time before getting married and how you were able to overcome it.
Okay. I think the first obstacle we had was that my husband had concluded his own education. He had 2 master's degrees. He was already working, and he'd already decided that in year so and so I'm going to get married. And I just got a scholarship to go and do a PhD, which means I was going to go to the UK. And the people listening to me have got to understand the context. It's not like today when everybody can jump on a plane and go and visit their partner or things like that. No WhatsApp, no Zoom call, no anything. In fact, if you wrote a letter, it took all of 3 or 4 weeks to get there. And when the person replied, it took another 3 or 4 weeks for it to come. That was the environment in which we were in. And, you know, why it was a challenge was because if I took this, accepted the scholarship and went and did a PhD, then I could not be here in the year that my husband wanted to be married. And he and I didn't want to be living on different continents after marriage. So we had a clear conversation. When people of today hear it, I read such stories and people will be saying, how can he be threatening her? Why is he saying, why does he want her to give up her dreams for his? Are there people who threaten their partners and want them to give up their dreams? Yes. But I think we project that on to regular people. And because we project that onto regular people, we discourage them from having conversations that they ought to have. So I want people to be clear when they're listening to me. I'm talking about the kind of conversations you should have in order to be able to make the right decisions about your relationship. So my husband was not afraid of how what he was saying was going to be construed. Because if he knew that he wanted to be married in a certain year, and he also knew that he didn't want to be living in a separate continent from the wife that he married, he needed to know, this wife, this PhD you want to do you still want to marry me? So the way he put it to me is that, you know what, I really want to marry you, and I know you want to marry me. But I also know that you have worked hard to get this scholarship for a PhD. So I leave you. Go look at it. What do you want to do? But know that if you choose to go and do this PhD, it will mean that me and you can no longer go. And I till today, I value my husband for being courageous enough to do that, because it probably was the first time in my life that I had to sit down and ask myself, what do I want? And at that point in time, what I wanted was to marry my husband. PhD did not. I looked at it, I looked at my life, I looked ahead, and I told myself that marrying this man is really what you want. And so I went abroad. I started the master's program. I completed it. My parents wanted me to stay back and do the PhD. I said no. They bought me a ticket. I came home. They wanted to talk with me. But when I got home, I told them that no, I had weighed it. I sought counsel. In the university I was over there, I actually had sessions with the chaplain. That's the person who was supposed to be guiding students, chaplain who was supposed to be guiding students. I remember one conversation that helped me to make the decision. He said, one way is not better than the other. But one thing is this: know that when you have chosen one path, when you meet challenges along that way, you are going to be thinking the other path that you didn't choose is better. So, but realize one thing: it is because you are not on that path that you don't see the potholes and the ditches that are there. Essentially, what he said to me is that once you make your decision, the other option is no longer open to you. So no need to be worrying about it. And when I looked at everything, I was confident that if I went on and married my husband, I would meet challenges along the way. I would have things that would make me wonder, why didn't I stay and do a PhD? But that path will always look nicer because it was not the path I chose. So that was the first challenge I think that we had. But once I made up, and it wasn't something that I just decided. So I went on to the UK. I was doing my program. We were talking in that period. I was seeking counsel and figuring things out by myself. And by the time I was getting to the end of the master's program, my mind was made up that I was going to come back home, and I did. The second challenge that we faced was my own parents didn't have any problem with me marrying someone from another tribe, but my husband's family was concerned. At the time, I did not know why they were concerned, but again, I had been brought up to be curious about why people do the things that they did. My husband was certain that he wanted to marry me. And when his family asked him and said, can we find someone for you who has all the traits that Dupe has and who is Igbo? He said to them, that person can't work because one of the reasons I chose her is because she's a Yoruba woman.
Wow.
So he said this to them, and once he said this to them, remember, when he was, as it were, defending me with his family when I was not there, it wasn't just defending me against his family. My husband as a person is someone who defends whatever he believes in. So that fundamental quality was in him, that I am an adult, I am choosing this path, I have weighed my options, I have calculated the risk, and this is the way I'm going. Once he makes that decision, he defends it with everything that he has. So him defending me, and I'm making that distinction because this had nothing to do with my his family, who eventually became my in-laws. This had to do with him. He it was who came to toast me. He it was who decided that he was going to marry me. It was his responsibility to get that across to his family. And there were things that happened that made my husband, that made me know that, in fact, there were things he did that I was saying to him that, don't let it be me who will cause trouble between you and your family. And he just told me that I'm the one who is marrying you. And they have to accept that. But as I said, later on, when I found out the reasons why my in-laws did not want him to marry a Yoruba person, I understood them. Why? They had been through the war. When the war happened, Igbo people all had to go back home. And my mother-in-law in particular was thinking, if a war should happen again, what will happen? Will I come with them to the east? Will I stay with my people? What will happen to our children? This was her son. She didn't want his heart to be broken. Of course, she couldn't communicate that. So it came out as, you shouldn't marry an Igbo girl. You shouldn't marry a Yoruba girl. Why can't you get an Igbo girl? So everybody would think that it was about me. And in that moment, it was about me. But it wasn't really about me. It was about valid concerns that they had. And with the benefit of hindsight now, I see that my husband addressed it for them. Because for the past 37 years, if you go to our village, which I call my little London, everybody there knows me. And, people sometimes describe, people who get to know me now, refer to me as the Igbo woman who speaks Yoruba well. They don't know that I'm not an Igbo woman at all. I'm of Yoruba origin. I still don't even speak Igbo now. The third challenge that we had was that of religion. I had been born in the Baptist church, and it's congregational. So church is your life. Church is your family. You go to church in the morning, you go to church in the evening, you visit people after church, you attend prayer meeting. So in my mind, anybody who is a Christian, that's the kind of life that they live as well. Now, my husband was an Anglican, and he had grown up in an environment where you go to church, and this is no disrespect to Anglicans, who I have now been a part of for 37 years. But involvement of individuals, and I'm not talking of church programs now, involvement of individuals in the lives of their fellow parishioners was absent. So at the time that I married my husband, we both thought we were Christians and everything. I didn't even create a problem when we were dating. Is after we got married and I wanted to continue all these, you go to the church after service, you greet everybody, you go for visitation, you do all kinds of things, that it became an issue. Because, I mean, my husband just said, do you want to be the vicar's wife? I mean, do you want to take over the job of the vicar? And things like that. So that's when but for me, when he had made it clear that when we get married, we'll be going to the Anglican church, one of the first things I did was find out what is Anglicanism about. And someone referred me that I should go and get the Book of Common Prayers. So I actually read the Book of Common Prayers, order of baptism, order of confirmation, ordination of priests. I went until I got to 39 articles of religion. And when I went through all of that, I was persuaded that the theology of the Anglican Church is the same as the theology of the Baptist Church. The practical way of living the theology out was different, but because fundamentally I was persuaded that the theology was the same, I just followed him to the Anglican Church and became a part of it, and I have been there since then. So those were the three things. Other differences showed up after we became married, which is why I said earlier that there are many things that, until you get married, you won't discover. So perhaps when you meet people, what you should be looking at is what's the character. And people always say, somebody can pretend and, you can be deceived. It's you who show up your game. Begin to practice judging people's character. Look at how people do things and read what it tells you. So for me now, if I meet you, Nkechi, for the first time and I say, Nkechi, how are you? And we become friends. And then we say, let's meet next week at 7 p.m. And at 7 p.m., you don't show up. And you don't call me and say, Nkechi, you don't start calling me from 6 o'clock. I say, Nkechi, I realize that I won't get there by 7 o'clock. I won't be quarreling with you. You just kept me waiting. No, I'm just thinking, okay, this person does not respect other people's time. We'll see. We agree again to meet at 4 o'clock. You do the same thing. By the time you do it the third time, I'm saying, I start watching out. This person does not respect other people. This person is not responsible. In what other ways is that attribute showing up in them? And so you can actually read people and judge their character. You have more capacity to do that than you realize. You just need to train yourself to become somebody who is it, because you're going to discover new things. So what you want to do is recognize, are they people of character? Are they people of integrity? Do they keep their word? Let me share this quick story just to help you to understand what I'm saying. A young lady spoke to me recently. She broke up a relationship because she had told the guy that she wanted to abstain from sex till marriage. And he agreed that they can do that. But in order to satisfy himself sexually, he started sleeping with another lady. And she found out and broke up the relationship. Other people, including her pastor, were now trying to prevail on her to resume the relationship. And she came to talk to me. I told her that I was just going to put her through a series of questions. And eventually what I said to her is, if somebody respects you, and because they cannot have sex with you now that you are dating them, they go to meet another person. In marriage, there is going to be a lot of times when you will not be able to sleep with them, even though you are their wife. What is that telling you about that person? And it was at that point that she recognized that she shouldn't succumb to all of the pressures and she should just keep the relationship broken. So people just need to look out for character, increase their capacity to recognize a good person. Whether the person is good for you is another thing. But somebody who is of good character and attitude, then you need to be able to recognize people who are open to learning and willing to change as they get new information.
Thank you so much, Moliwo. I was trying to jot out something that you were sharing. Okay, so I don't think this question was not planned for now, but I think it fits this time, which is, so, because in this generation, from what you said about character, many people seem to want to date status, and status can mean a lot of things. It can mean he's the son of this person, he has money, he's working in this brand, he's a CEO, or what against status, he has over 100K followers. There are a lot of things now that stand as status symbol, or he's even attractive, girls follow him. At what point? And so some people would compromise the character that you've been talking about now for those status, and they will get hurt, and they'll be the ones in there, they'll be the ones basically coming for crisis management because it could have been avoided. What do you have to say to those group of people? You've shared a lot, but I don't know if you've got any final, any particular words on this status marriage thing in our particular generation. And I said that there are even a lot of examples that I can't necessarily state here. You see two people come out and say they want to get married, and people will say, she doesn't fit you, or it doesn't fit you. So who is the person arranging who fits who? And that's, so people are succumbing to that pressure, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly. You are the one that now knows who fits who. So I wanted you to please speak on that now before we move on.
Okay. I have just one response to those people. Take personal responsibility for your life. Only one person will live with the consequences of your choice. You. And the way life is, the thing you have control over is your choice. Once you make that choice, you have no control over the consequences. So when you want to make a choice, and sometimes I talk to people, I say, examine your decision-making mechanism. Every single individual has a decision-making mechanism. Look at how you choose your job. Look at how you choose your clothes. Look at how you spend your money. Look at how you choose your friends. That your decision-making mechanism will be revealed in all of that. Whether you consider the implications of the decisions you make or not, every decision you make has implications. So people, status, status is like physical attraction. If you think status is what you should consider, it's okay. That's your choice. But know that making status the criteria for making your decision has implications. If you focus on status and character is not in that status, it means you have chosen a life of pain. I think one of the best things that happened to me in my life is having my mother. As a child, as little as 5 years old, the mantra that she made me and my siblings to understand is that life is sacrifice and enjoyment. Life is sacrifice and enjoyment. The only thing, you have a choice. You can choose to make the sacrifice first and then enjoy the fruits of your sacrifice. You can choose to focus on enjoyment first, which means you are not calculating your risk, which means you are not paying attention to the things that you're going to pay, you need to pay attention to. You know, it's like drinking without paying attention to what you can contain. It is never your intention to lie down in a gutter. But when you have drunk beyond what you are supposed to drink, because you did not know how to sacrifice, you will find yourself in the gutter. And I shared something yesterday. If you do not know yourself and know what you need well, and you make decisions about the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, there are some choices that you will make that have no remedy. The consequences have no remedy. What I mean by not having remedy is that even if you divorce, you can't remove the history from your life. You will heal from the pain, but the scars will be there. So, you know, people are always quick to think, hey, if things don't go well, I will divorce the person. Well, yes, all divorce says is that you are no longer married to this person. And you have a document that tells you that. But every other thing that happened to you in that marriage remains a scar in your life. And I'm not saying this to frighten people. I'm just saying it to them to help them to understand that the decision to marry, that's the first thing. You have to first of all decide, I want to marry. When you decide that you want to marry, you need to study yourself and understand yourself and now know who is the kind of person that will fit you, whether you are male or female. And when you start meeting people, you are now, when I say the kind of person that will fit you. So for example, now, I've been happily married to my husband for 37 years. Part of the reason why he and I have been happy is that he is a man who understands that human beings need to be free to do whatever they like. So when people are speaking all this grammar of this is what a woman can do, this is what a woman cannot do, and everything, one of the things about my own husband was that he was a person who told me that if God didn't mean you to use a first-class brain, because I have first-class honors in engineering, he won't have given you a first-class brain. So me and you, we have to find a way that we are going to live such that this asset that God gave you, it's going to be useful. And he has had to make sacrifices because he has had to give me freedom to express myself. Now, the thing is, if I didn't understand that essentially one of the things that I need in life is capacity to be free, not to be independent of my husband. There's a difference. Not to be independent. I'm going to Ghana tomorrow. I discussed it with my husband before I got onto that board. We discussed the implications and the impact, what it will take. And we agreed that it is a sacrifice that both of us wanted to make. Are there things that he would want to do with me while I'm away? Of course there are. But you see, because he's a person who understands who I am and what God gave to me, he recognizes also that he'll be holding me back. It has nothing to do with whether I'm a woman or man. There are things also that he is doing that I have to sacrifice for, because I would rather have my husband in one way, but I recognize what God has also put in his life.
Okay, thank you so much, Mommy Mo. I mean, I feel like saying, so much to just take everything in. All right, the next segment of this mentoring section is, so would you, because it's a different question, but I don't know if it was the same, what were your fears before you got married? Well, quite different. So that's your own fears now, not even obstacles, but your own fears of marriage or whatever you thought it meant.
I think that because of the kind of upbringing that I had, there was a lot of stability in my life. In fact, until I became an adult, I didn't know that many things could go wrong in people's life. It doesn't mean that I was protected. So I saw my parents, I saw people around me. What the kind of people that I grew up around were people who faced challenges. So they assume that challenges are part of life. That when it hits you, you just look for how you do it. As an illustration, one of the things my father, helped us to understand is he doesn't like to hear that somebody is the cause of your problem. And he told us, he said, I don't mean that there are no bad people in the world. There are bad people. There are people who do wicked things. There are people who do juju and things like that. He said, but the day you believe that somebody is the cause of your problem, your focus will shift. Your focus will be on, how can I avoid this person? How can I prevent this person from impacting me? And all of those kind of things. That's what you'll be thinking. Excuse me. Your focus will leave the problem. Let me just take some water.
Yes, please. Thank you so much. Fiona is saying this is loaded. Yes. Absolutely.
So you will start looking at the problem, and you start looking for how to protect yourself, how to defend yourself, how to make yourself safe, which is a valid thing. But he said you will not be addressing the problem. So, for example, if I have a bad boss in the office, yes, the boss is bad. Yes, the boss is really seeking to hurt me. The way my father will look at it is that, okay, when you have a person like that, how should you relate with them? What are the things you need to know? Can you build your capacity in that area so that you don't put yourself in a situation where the person can, have anything against you? And so, when I was approaching marriage, so essentially it meant that I didn't remember I was going into marriage recognizing that many things will happen, which I could not have foreseen.
Yes.
I was married into a tribe that I had absolutely no idea about, and I was just going to be learning about. Marriage itself was new for me because I was now going to be the master of my own life, juggling things, making decisions. So all of those things were going to happen. But for me, I had already been nurtured to believe that they are just a part of life. So what it means is that I didn't have any concerns about marriage. And then as a person, I had also, long before I got married, made a decision that I was going to be happy in my life, and it was going to depend only on me and on God. In fact, I told my husband that. So essentially what it meant was that whenever I met a situation, it just showed me that this is an area that you don't know anything about or you don't have capacity. I remember at that time, there were not online bookstores. So I would go to Leventi stores during my break, and I would just look at the bookshelves and look at, can I see a book that is addressing the situation I'm currently facing? Not just marriage, but just about life in general. So for me, even now, people ask me, what are my fears about old age? I don't have any fears as such, Will I ask myself, okay, there's a possibility that when you are old, you may become ill. How will you handle it? What do your children know? So that's my general perspective on life. Every time we get moved out of our comfort zone, and that happens often, we enter the fear zone. We are afraid. It's normal. If you are afraid, it's normal. It's just telling you that you are moving out of a place that you are familiar with into a place that you are unfamiliar with. And you just need to get used to it and then say, okay, what will I do to make this new situation something that I'm familiar with?
Hmm. Okay. All right, Momo. What were your expectations before you got married? Did you have any sort of maybe wild expectation of doing the, I mean, just expectations generally? Okay, or maybe this who will be cooking, this who will not be cooking. Was there some sort of discussion around that expectation, and was it different when you got married?
Okay. In the time that I got married, both men and women, to a large extent, were all nurtured in the same way, which is we were nurtured that it is the duty of the man to be a breadwinner, and it is the duty of the woman to cook and look after the house. And until recently, women weren't doing high-powered jobs. So I don't think me and my husband ever had conversations about who we do what. We just fell into what was the routine for that period. My husband knew how to cook because as a bachelor, he looked after himself. He lived for many years on his own. And occasionally he would choose to cook for me. But here's the way I look at it. I didn't feel bad about it the way that people feel bad about it in today's world. And I understand why people feel bad about it in today's world. And if there is time, I would explain that. But that I did that does not mean, like many young people think today, that we are foolish. You see, many people think that women who did that, their mothers and people, were foolish. See, let's learn to interrogate situations. There are marriages that are toxic. They are toxic because the participants in that marriage did not have the skills to have healthy marriages. That's what makes the relationship toxic. Now, there are marriages that are healthy, and the people lived in the traditional roles of men and women and didn't have any problems with it. Why? Because when you get closer to them, they were united, they respected one another, they gave one another freedom. Those roles are not what is important. Conversations are so focused on those roles, they are making us to miss what is really important, which is that, is this person, does he or she have the capacity to live with you in a healthy, interdependent way? Coming back to the matter of roles, for example, my husband admitted to me when we had our first child that that he thinks babies are too fragile, he cannot carry them. And so for the first maybe like 3 or 4 months, he couldn't even hold our baby. I mean, if somebody is that frightened, no matter how tired I am, is he able to help me with the baby? No. And it isn't because he doesn't want to help me. It is because he had never been exposed to that and he just was frightened. He would look at the baby and everything, but he couldn't even carry the baby. So where am I going? Some of these things that we argue about, they actually come from our origin, from our nurture, from our history. I was Yoruba. My husband was Igbo. In Igbo culture, is the mother of the woman that comes. In Yoruba culture, is the mother of the man that comes. My mother refused to come because she felt it was my husband's mother who should come. My husband's mother did not come because she thought it's my mother who should come. I ended up being the person who will look after myself. So when I see people being unhappy, you know, I'm just, it's your history and your husband's history. And if you both have not been proactive to think about some of these things, you'll be fighting yourself needlessly. So the roles, what makes the roles really important today is because when a man and woman, even when you've dated yourself for 5 years, when you marry, you are still strangers. What do I mean? You have not dug deep to recognize what are the paradigms. You know, you're just thinking, in today's world, when I marry, my husband has to do this. I'm working with a couple now, and when they were doing some of the exercises that they I gave them, I realized that that young man, even though he's living in Canada, because he was nurtured in the traditional way, he has carried on. He said that he's going to be the provider. As we were having the conversation, I now said that is good for you to be the provider and for your wife to be dependent on you. Both of you are happy about it. I have no problem. However, if something happens to you, so you're not making that decision just based on what you want. You are making that decision based on where you are now and the future that you are looking forward to. So roles at that time was that it was the woman who would cook. I was the person who used to go for the children's open day and visit them in school when they got into secondary school. But you see, I didn't feel that my husband was cheating me, because essentially looking after a family has different parts. And what is important is to look for, you know, the washing plates, the cooking and all those things, they are the least of these things, even though they are important and we should talk about them. But when you look at your family as one piece, and you now sit down and say, what are the things that need to be done in this family? Children's homework, going to children's school, visiting our parents, spending time with our friends, going to work, and so on and so forth. You will realize that going to work requires about 14 hours of your life. Parenting requires about 14 hours of each day. Interacting with your extended family requires maybe some 6 hours. When you total the number of hours that you need per day to live as a couple, 24 hours is not enough. So you now have to be saying, if both of us, between us, we have 48 hours, who will do what? When you start looking at life that way, if washing plate is what is assigned to you, it won't matter that you are the one washing the plate. Why? Because you know that your partner is also doing something else. When my children were in secondary school and my daughter would say, why didn't daddy come for visiting day? One day I sat her down. I said, you know what? Daddy loves you as much as he loves everybody else. The thing is that this work he is doing now is what is giving us the money to have the kind of life that we are having. So actually, daddy is sacrificing an opportunity to be here with you in order to actually make provision for you to be in this school. Look at what happened there. Of course, she's having a valid demand. But the thing is that she needs to understand that in life, you have to give up something in order to get another one. When they're on holiday, he spends a lot of time with them. And he's not losing because it's a conscious decision that we both have made. So I hope that that would help people to see. I really wish that we would be looking behind the scenes and thinking deeper about these things that we talk about. Remember what I said in the beginning. If your situation is toxic, what makes it toxic is the fact that one or both of you do not have the skills that are required to relate in a healthy way with another person. That's what you people should work on. It's not about who does what in the house.
Thank you so much, Ma. So much to digest from there, and just a deeper perspective. A deeper perspective to help reshape some of this conversations that are just on the surface but are not necessarily solving anything. Thank you so much, Ma. I'm going to start wrapping up with my questions. So if you have specific questions that you want to ask to Mommy Mo, please use the question icon to ask your questions now, because if I don't get questions before my last question, then we'll wrap up with the questions that I've asked. I would like to ask you next, Ma, what pleasantly surprised you after you got married? If there were any surprises, and how did you deal with that? Maybe something that you were never told. For some people, relationship, giving birth, pregnancy. So we'd like to know how you dealt with any pleasant surprise you got.
What pleasantly surprised me after I married is when we were already about 17 years in marriage, was when I took what, with the benefit of hindsight, I now see is a really foolish decision. And my husband did not, so it made him unhappy. It made him really unhappy. But he just accepted it. And what was that decision? A decision to retire early. When I say with the benefit of hindsight, it was a good decision to retire, but I think that I didn't understand the financial implications of the decisions that I was making. And it meant that for many years, my husband had to do everything. He was already the major provider, but what I was bringing in was no longer there. And that's the kind of thing that from the stories that you hear, your husband should be using it to beat you every day. If you did not take that kind of irresponsible decision, we will not be where we are today. Unless my husband will say such a thing tomorrow. Unless he will say it tomorrow. He just took it as one of the things that I did in order to become a person who knows herself. And so, for those people who say these things, sometimes when your husband has a perspective of a man is the sole breadwinner, it has benefits. Because I then asked him and said, so why didn't you, let me know how much? He said, but even before I married you, I had already been in school to realize that as the man, I have to take care of the family. So essentially, it meant that even when I was bringing my income in and I was joining in, for people, people say, what do I think about joint accounts? I say, I don't have an opinion on joint account. I have an opinion on joint finance. And what I mean by that is a couple should first sit down and ask themselves, to run this family over the next how many years, how much do we need? And it is only when they are clear about that they will now ask, where is the money going to come from? And by the time they start doing that, they will know that if they are going to do this life together, their money too will be joined. Whether the money is in A's account or in B's account is not what is important. What is important is that they know what is ahead of them and they know that they have to fund it. And so it becomes, that's what I call joint finance. So because we had that, I eventually really dawned on me the implications of what I had made, the decision I had made when I could not begin to earn an income for quite a long time. And so I was also patient with my husband, about a lot of things, because I realized that he was doing that much. And if he was upset or irritable, it is understandable. So that is probably the thing that was a really pleasant surprise for me. It was good to see that the man I married had the character that I thought that he had.
Okay. Which takes us to the next question about what your typical dating period was like. In this context, I mean, how long did you date for before marriage? And what were the key things, from what you can remember, because it's been a long time now, what were the key things or issues that you both ironed out or agreed on that continue to be a strong foundation for your marriage today?
I met him in 1980. I think you can safely say that our relationship began at the end of NYSC period, which is 1981. And so we used to see each other frequently and go out, and he used to visit me in the house and I will visit him until 82 when I went to the UK and came back at the end of 83. And then we resumed seeing one another again. And we eventually got married in 1985. What are some of the things that we agreed? with all of these things that we are talking about, no need, you know. So my husband said sex, money, and extended family is what causes problem the most in marriage, you know. So how do you want us to do money? And we agreed about it. It wasn't just this is how we were going to do. One of the things that I agreed to joint financing was because that's what I had seen my parents do. But even though that was it, we also had to sit down and iron out. And even though we ironed it out, when we got married, we discovered things that we didn't anticipate. And so it has been something, I can share that one of the money, because so when I agreed to doing money, I really wanted to do money, and he also wanted to do money. But what I didn't know was he knew how to manage finance, you know, record your finances, details and everything. Me, I was just if you don't have money, don't spend it kind of person. And so it was a struggle, because then keeping records, doing the things, one of the things that frustrated me was, you know, when we would say, I would say, oh, let's do something. And he would say, we don't have money. I say, how can you say we don't have money? Shebi, we have, why don't we have money now? And then he would show me one. So for our school fees, for example, for the children, a year is 12 months, 3 terms. So we divided the year into into 3. And so every month when we collected our salary, we put something away towards the school fees. We put something, you know, once we took the money for the bills out, we didn't spend it. In my own pattern that I came with, if it's not your time to pay NEPA bill, you can use the money, and when it's time to pay NEPA bill, you'll be looking for it. In my husband's pattern, once you have put the money for NEPA bill there, the money is spent. That NEPA has not come to collect it does not mean. But when I look back now, I am really grateful that he was that kind of a person, because the comfortable life that we have at this stage of our life is because he insisted that such sacrifices should be made. Sometimes it is the woman who knows it. And I really wish that the men who have such wives will value them and allow them to guide the family in that direction.
Thank you so much, Ma. Is there anything you would have done differently in getting married? Not change of your spouse, your husband, I would just any sort of action that you would have done differently that may have maybe made your initial years of your marriage easier, better, whatever the case may be, or whatever difference means to you.
Okay. I would have educated myself more about marriage. And educated myself about marriage in general, but also educated myself about life. You know, I have recently, when I work with couples or even singles, I have what I call an independent life skills assessment. The thing was that even though I was an adult, there were certain life skills that I had, but there were certain life skills that I was completely oblivious of. And ignore, you know, when you are an adult, and certain skills you should have as an adult and you don't have them. So for example, if you're somebody who doesn't know how to manage money well, even if you're earning a lot of money, once you don't know how to manage well, you will still be like somebody who does not know how to manage well. So with the benefit of hindsight now, I would have been more intentional about exploring what life as an adult is. And I would have equipped myself to be an adult who has capacity in different areas. Yes, that's what I would have done.
Thank you, Ma, for sharing. How have you been? Maybe 2 or 3 tips so that we can learn. How have you been able to keep your marriage thriving? Because 37 years is not 3 years, and we would just like to know maybe some key tips that you could share at this time to help people learn that a marriage that is long and a marriage that is thriving is possible. Because the new word on the street is, oh, it's not by length, but it's still by length to me. Length matters, because that's the latest thing, and it's not by length. So How have you been able to keep it with the long marriage, but it's also successful?
Okay. I think the first thing is just to understand that you're different people. You know, one of the things that really causes trouble is that because I know my life, because I see life through my own filters, my expectations are defined by my own filters. So when I want my husband to do something, it is likely that I'm expecting him to do it in the way that I think it should be done. You're different people. Your differences will create conflict. But understand that your conflict is just showing you that there is stuff about your partner that you don't know. I usually like to use our football relationship. And if you go to my YouTube channel, I think I did something about that. I can't sit to watch a football match. My husband has been following a club for almost 40 years now.
Hey,
So,
wow.
I mean, so he wants me to sit with him through every match. I can't sit with him through every match. So I have to look. His desire to have me sit with him in every match, is it about the match? No. It's just that this is something that he likes and values, and he wants me to be a part of it. So taking that information, this is what I do. As the match is going on, I'm on Google following the what they're saying. And so when I come down, I'm going to talk with him about that match. Sometimes I will say something, he will say, how did you know that? I say, I checked it up on Google before I came down. So what is happening there? I'm joining him in his love for football, but I am not participating in watching the football match. That's recognizing our differences. I'm here on Instagram now. My husband will ask me, how did it go? So what did you say? We will discuss it. If he sees things in newspaper, but will he ever come to Instagram with me? No. Are people thinking this woman who is telling us about marriage, is she really happily married? We never see her husband. Well, but he knows me well enough, and I know him well. He knows this is important to me. He gives me space to do it. We're unique. We're different. And we've just accepted that we are different. We now build our lives around those differences. Now, are there things that you need to have harmony in? Yes. That brings me to the second tip. Myself and my husband, we talk about a lot of things. And even in that one, we are different. I talk a lot. I can, as you've heard me, you see that I talk a lot. I can express myself. My husband is a very silent person. So this is the way our conversations go. I will say, let's talk about this. I will say everything that I want to say. And then I will say, I've finished preaching. And then we will finish and we will go. He may not even say anything. But by watching his behavior subsequently, I can tell whether he had me or he internalized it. Sometimes I will then say to him, see, this thing I told you, I need to have your feedback on it, or you don't have to give it to me right away. Give it to me at your convenience. So again, you see that in that, because I could very easily say, I always talk and you don't even say anything. Well, if somebody is somebody who does not know how to say anything, me campaigning for him to say anything is just going to create friction between us. So recognize that you're different. Use your differences to help you. Don't use it to divide you. That's the second tip. The third tip is be open to learn and be willing to change. Focus on what is in your power to do. Every time you have an issue, don't read a book to see what your husband needs to do so that your marriage can be better. Don't listen to someone so that you can see what you will tell your wife to do. Leave them. Focus on yourself. What should I do? What's in my power to do? What else can I do to improve myself and my situation? That's what, if you do that, you would already. And then finally, if you go to my page on Instagram, there is something, 5 hours that can change your life. The Gottmans wrote it. I'll pin it up today so that if you come to my page, you will see it. If you follow those things, I go to say bye-bye to my husband in the morning when he's going. If it's me who is going out, he will say bye-bye to me. When we come back in the evening, we sit down together and we talk, ask how your day went, and things like that. Those are little things that may not be very important. There are other practices that you can do. If you just go through the posts on my page, you will get a lot of interesting ideas that you can take and use in your marriage.
Thank you so much. The Mommy Mo's page, like we call her Mommy Mo, her name is Modupe Ehirim, but we call her Mommy Mo. Mo's page is the Right Fit Marriage, so you can follow there. What's your page on YouTube, ma? Your YouTube channel?
If you just search for me by Modupe Ehirim, you will see my channel. You would also see recordings of interactions that I've had with other people on different topics.
Okay, so yes, Modupe Ehirim on YouTube. And if you are watching this, because you're going to be watching this on YouTube, it's a good time to like and subscribe, especially like and subscribe so that more people can see this content. Thank you, and of course, share as well. We're beginning to round up. Okay, Ma, so what are your thoughts on, I think just 2 more questions. What are your thoughts on why there's a lot of failed marriages in this generation and why there's a lot of fear out there? What are your general thoughts from what you've observed, the work you do, on why there's failure and fear on the part of those married and fear on those about to get married? It just looks like, Momo, look at how we've enjoyed your story. It just looks so complicated right now to get married. It's just a lot. Even as simple as people just meeting is now is so complicated, and I'd just like you to please share your thoughts on that. That's why we started this series, to help just make things easier.
Okay. I think first, people need to understand that more marriages are not failing now. We just get to know about more marriages failing. What I mean by that is, a failed marriage is not necessarily a marriage that ended in a divorce. Many people are living together apart. And in the old times, this also happened. So, but what is happening now, which was not happening before, is that bad marriage stories get more publicity than good marriage stories. What do I mean? So if somebody shares a post and says, see what happened, that story is shared so many times. Sometimes 1 year later, it will be shared again as though it is a fresh story. So our minds are assaulted by these bad marriage stories. What we don't realize is that we're not just reading it. Our minds are interacting with it. So our fear emotions go up. We want to protect ourselves. And so the more of such stories that you read, the more that you become frightened. And the more that even for those who are married, when your spouse does one small thing, you start thinking, this one that he's doing this, am I sure? How do I know that I can trust him? How do I know? A lot of all of those things like that. That is what that is happening more now. And remember, films, blogs, social media, everywhere is all full of these stories. Now, it is okay for people who are in difficult marriages to have outlets. The second thing is that we don't interrogate the stories. What do I mean by interrogate the stories? So when you hear, the man, he kept her in the house, he doesn't allow her to go out. He doesn't give her money. He doesn't do. We read that story. We sympathize. We empathize with the person. Our emotions go up. But we never say to ourselves, what are the steps that this person took that got them into this situation? Asking such questions doesn't mean that we're not empathizing with the people. It helps us to put the story into perspective. Because if somebody is blind or blindfolded themselves and fell into a ditch and their leg broke, we should sympathize with them. But we should also know that it is a blindfold that made them to fall into the ditch. So we should go away from that story, sympathizing with them, but also saying to ourselves, when you are going to a place that you don't know, don't blindfold yourself. So that's interrogating the story is what we don't do. So immediately the message we send to our mind, which is stored in our memory, is, hey, marriage is dangerous. So no, marriage is neutral. And you need to constantly remind yourself that it is the things that the people do. The person who is treating their wife that way, if you interrogate the story and ask, that was what was modeled for them. Because you don't interrogate this story, you are just internalizing the pain of the story. And that's so every time you hear the word marriage, pain, hurt, disaster, those are the images that come into your mind. How can you be somebody who wants to marry when that is all that is? I mean, who would want to go with their eyes open to something that is going to cause them pain, hurt, and disaster? Who is going to be in a situation where they think is a painful, hurtful, disastrous situation? Who is going to be happy? No. What you want to do, there is a book I read on negativity bias. I forget the title now, but what they said in that book is that if you read one negative story, you need to go and look for 5 good stories to read.
Wow.
In order to erase the impact of that one bad story. So now imagine that every day we are feeding our mind with that bad story. We are internalizing the pain. We're internalizing, in short, in our mind, marriage is equated to hurt. And when people say we don't know people who are married, who have good marriages, me, I'm perplexed. Open your eyes. Remove the filter. Those people are in your neighborhood. But you know what is happening? When you see them, you are going to be thinking, how do we know that these people are not pretending? Because even me, with my happy marriage, sometimes when I finish reading all of the stories on Facebook, I remember when there was some infidelity stories that trended and everything. I started thinking to myself, I said, are you sure that Bonnie has not deceived you? Yes, that was.
Wow.
Is it possible that he has cheated on you and he has just kept it, you know? Is there a possibility that you might just discover when he's no longer here that he actually was unfaithful to you? And I had to sit down with my husband. I said to him, see, tell me the truth. Have you ever cheated on me? And the man laughed. And we talked about it. And he said, people don't realize that. He said, I'm not cheating on you because it's not because you are my wife. It's because as a person, I have told myself that, why will I not have control over myself? What am I looking for? So that conversation reminded, but to be honest with you, for a few days after we had that conversation, I still kept on thinking, what if he just told me that because that's what I want to hear? But you know where all of that came from? It came from the interaction of my mind with all of those stories. And we very easily believe the negative stories, because I tell people, this bad story that they share on Facebook, you don't know the person. Have we not found situations where somebody will come up and say, the person you people posted their story yesterday, this is the other side of the story.
Many times. Many times.
But we very easily believe those bad stories. But when it is a good story, we'll not be saying, how do we know it's true? We are not cuckoo living with them. People pretend, and so on and so forth. No, you are the gatekeeper of your mind. What you are exposed to is not what is the gatekeeper of your mind.
Mommy Mo, the one I will never forget is that for every negative news, whatever it is, marriage or not, you have to make sure that you find at least minimum 5 positive. And the sad part about this is that people do this for money. If it's money, if it's fame now, they will find a way to say, and that person's bad story will not be my own. Me, I will make it. Especially for money, people find a way to make it. But when it's marriage, there's just one excuse or the other. But of course, we are debunking all those biases and excuses with this conversation. And I thank you so much, Mommy Mo. The final question for you, Mommy Mo, will be, you spoke, which is very important, you spoke in context of one answer you were giving, that independence is different from being free in terms of how independence, being independent on your dependent, rather, I think dependent on your husband versus being free. Do you just want to speak on that as we wrap up? Because I think that was a very important part for, especially for our generation, to learn more about.
Okay. When you take a job, you already have agreed that there is an interdependent relationship between you and your employer, and between you and the other employees in that organization. So, for example, if they say you have to be arriving at 8 o'clock, no matter where you are living, you can squeeze space, you can be unhappy, but you know that part of what the job came with is that you're going to be there at 8 o'clock and you're going to be closing at 4 o'clock. There is freedom within that environment. What do I mean by freedom? Freedom means that your employer understands that you can be ill. If you are ill, your employer can now say you were ill. Therefore, I mean, some foolish employers do it, but it's because they don't know what labor law says, and because we don't carry people to court. You are not supposed to deduct somebody's salary because they didn't come for one day because they're ill, because the law says so. There is freedom to do that. Now, it will be abuse of the freedom for you to now say, I have 7 days casual leave, but something has happened. Please give me additional casual leave. Because what it means is that you are looking only at how your relationship affects you as a person. You're not looking at how it affects your employer if you now are not in the work at the time that you're supposed to be. That is the kind of similar things exist in marriage. By reason of choosing to become married, you have given up some of your independence. The reason why you need to understand that is that there is almost no decision that you will make in marriage that will not impact your partner. It's just, it has nothing, it's not a, you as a married person, you can't make decisions only based on what you want, how you see life, and all of those kind of things. And that's why in getting married, a very critical life skill for an adult is learning to make decisions with other people. Being in a situation where you have to do things together and all of you have to agree, because it shows you that you are not independent in that sense. So a decision to get married essentially means that you have become independent. I mean, you have given up some independence. What freedom is in that kind of an interdependent relationship is that both of us understand that everything we do affects the other. But I choose to recognize that you want to do this, and even though it will cost me something, I am willing to pay the price and allow you to have it. And the relationship will be healthy because at different points in time, we are making that sacrifice. If I'm the only person making the sacrifice and you are getting everything that you want, that's a toxic relationship. And that's what I've been hammering on in this. That it is toxic is not what we should go to town with. What makes it toxic, what is lacking, is that somebody does not realize that when they got married, they gave up their independence. So let me use a situation that we normally see, which is that a man is married and expects his wife to give up everything, and is thinking, but you are now married, you should know. Essentially, what the husband is saying to the wife is, disappear, don't exist again. But the thing is that if you saw a person who, before you married them, invested their life, invested their resources and their parents' resources in growing themselves, it's not about the job. It's about what should they do with their mind. How should they find fulfillment in that kind of a way? So when you don't recognize freedom, as I have done it, that's when you will feel that the person should just fit into a mold that you have created for them. So independence in marriage is not something that would make the marriage to work well. Two independent people in a marriage will continue to have crises. Two people in a marriage who understand that their lives are conjoined and interdependent, but who consciously give freedom to one another to be their unique selves in a way that supports the dream that they have together, is what makes a good marriage.
Wow. On that note, Momo, we are going to complete this. Momo, your mission has been thoroughly and excellently completed. Please let us say thank you to Mommy Mo in the comments. Thank you so much, Ma, for everything.
Thank you.
The replay of this is going to be available on YouTube, SAGENEL TV. I didn't say that earlier, on SAGENEL TV, in case you're seeing clips somewhere, so you can find that there. Thank you so much, Mommy Mo. You're such an inspiration, and I thank you for even choosing to come and share with us, with the next generation, and how you even continually share, and you are a part of just sharing with us using trends. So you don't take it at all for granted. And we say thank you to Daddy Ehirim. How do I say Daddy Mo? No, it's not Daddy. So Daddy Ehirim. Thank you so much. Yes, Fiona, everything, and I'm sure that a lot more people will be able to access the replay. In fact, we're going to make sure of that. That's the whole essence, so that it goes as far as possible. Do you have any final words, Ma, before we log out, before we close the live, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think it's very important for our listeners to know marriage is important beyond you. It is the way by which our community survives. It is the place, you know, so when a man and woman come together, yes, it's a private decision. But once they make that private decision, everything that happens in it impacts other people who are not party to that decision. So it isn't really something. I like that we're talking about a lot of things on social media, but you see, those stories that you're talking on that we read on social media, they're not everything. Learn to interrogate situations. That is what will help you to learn. Don't just read, whether it is a good story or a bad story. When you have read it, let this question go through your mind. What did these people do to get to where they are? So you can, even me, I learn from bad marriage stories because I ask those questions. And once I see what they do, in fact, it is one of the reasons that I also became somebody who is very outspoken. Before, I just used to comment and everything. Then one day I said to myself, I said, if people don't see other people say things like I'm saying, then they can be forgiven for believing what they're reading. So if you know me personally, 5 years ago, he won't believe that I can be somebody who will be talking like this and talking about my life. But I weighed it and I talked about it with my family. And we said that, because if you ask me now, I can begin to name names for you of people who have been married 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, who are living the way that I've just described and who are happy. And I know many of them. So I'm thinking to myself, where are people getting this idea from? That there are no good marriages. And so I chose to do this. So, but if I wasn't asking those questions, I can just be looking at people. You have to ask, this story that I have just read, how did the people arrive at this thing? And just figure it out. You know, you can. And if you do that in your life all of the time, you are likely to take good decisions that will serve you well. For the singles, remember what I said. You are free to choose using whatever criteria that you want. But remember, once you have made the choice, the consequences just follow. You don't have control over the consequences of the choice that you made. There is a series of videos that I started doing. Today is day number 26. I think if you're single, and even if you are married, go and listen to those videos. Each video is 3 minutes. So it won't take you an hour and 20 minutes to listen to everything. But when you are listening to it, every time I ask a question and say, write down the answer to this question, please write down the answers to those questions. It will make you to think about a lot of things which you haven't thought about before.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ma, for your time, safe journey on your trip, and thank you for being a blessing to our generation.
And thank you for doing these interviews and really bringing out these questions, you know, that help your listener, help your guests to actually address issues which need to be addressed.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, then. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.